Hello.
Hello.
I'm not really Joanne, but
I thought you'd be at the temple.
we are. This is the office.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Alex. I'm just letting people in. Ellen.
Hi.
You got-
Hi.
come on, you got-
Hey, Tris.
Hey, how are you? Hi, Wanda.
Tris.
Hey, hello.
Hi, Teresa. Hi,
Hey,
Juan Luis.
Great glasses. They look like you're getting a little reflection there.
Yeah, I can never figure out how to stop that from happening with my computer.
Gives it
Yeah,
a-
nice to see you. Hmm. How are you, Juan Luis?
Hello. Hi.
Good. Welcome back.
Thank you.
He sounds so formal.
Hi, Juan Luis.
Hi, how are you?
Everyone at home, can you hear me okay?
Sure, you have the nicest backdrop. I'm like against a white wall.
This,
The
you know,
sound-
I'm in outside of Bakersfield, California.
Oh,
Oh,
So yeah, I'm
Can you
visiting
hear
my
us all the way
sister.
Oh, right.
is the volume okay
that.
with the
You
speaker?
might be the most distant.
I get the prize, maybe.
Yes.
Okay,
For
is the
sure.
volume okay? Because this is where the speaker's going to be. Babs, we're good?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, let me move a little closer.
Oh, that's much closer. Yeah.
It's kind of annoying with that light behind us, but
Well, it'll get dark.
my halo.
Yes. How appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. The speaker's all out chatting, so they'll be here soon.
Lei segue le regole.
Okay, got some more people in here. I'm going back and forth between Joanne's desk, which is a control computer, and the other one, admit. Orna, Susan. Hi, Karima.
Oh,
Yeah.
hi, Karima.
Hi, Iris.
Hi.
Oh, and
Hi,
Orna's
Orna.
there. Hi, Orna.
Hello.
And Olga, I don't know, but hi. Steve, I don't know, but hello.
hello.
Welcome to Buffalo, Juan Luis.
Thank you.
The person from Bakersfield, how did you find us?
Oh, I'm a friend of Juan Luis and Gary
Ah,
and Susie. We've all been in writing groups together. So
cool.
just so happens I happen to be here visiting my sister and didn't want to miss it. So
So Bakersfield exists. It's not just a name on the 405 North signs.
actually, she's in between Bakersfield and Fresno. She's she has a ranch with donkeys and horse and cats and dogs and everything else. So yeah, it's very, very rural and hot today. It's deserty, you know.
I grew up in LA.
Oh, did you?
For all you Buffalonians, every freeway in LA, if it wants to say far north, that direction also says Bakersfield.
Oh,
Hour north of LA.
Yeah. It's like the end of the line, huh?
Yes. Okay, anyone else to let me?
When I read The Raven, I think I would like the
Robert
mountain.
Martin.
You can't talk loud enough, Gary?
Hey, can you see
Everybody.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Take over.
Welcome, everyone. It's so
Wow,
great. We're going to get started. in a few minutes.
Awesome.
All right,
Joanne.
Hello,
Joe.
everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Carrie, hi.
So for our speakers, Gary, Camilla, Susan, stand here.
Okay,
From speaking to here, but you want to be able to see yourself.
so I can monitor.
Yeah.
I have
Alright.
a few things to say about you, Gary, I'm afraid.
Oh,
before
okay.
You can
Well,
go on.
feel free to rake me over the coals.
So, Rabbi, I will say a few things, then you will do your thing. Then I'll say a few things about our distinguished co-host.
And then I will introduce Susan. And I'll let Susan go. Then I'll introduce Therese, and then I'll let her go, and then and I'll finish out, and I'll read two short passages from this, and then I'll talk about. I'll read The Raven. We could do some Q&A, and then I'll read The Raven. How's that?
Yeah, Q&A and then the
Okay.
Raven.
Okay.
It would be wonderful. Usually we have more time than we think we do. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there's some people here from my writing group.
Oh, cool.
Nice to see. But this is a very mysterious place for a mystery night, don't you
Oh,
think?
yeah. No, I think so.
I thought I'm in the middle of the third book now. I realized I hadn't read it yet. And the writing in places is just stunning.
Thank you. I wanted to do the book within the book, and I wrote that first, and then let it sit for a few months before I started the frame. So, and I didn't want to do two first person, and so I thought, well, maybe she's detached from herself after this experience, so I'll do the second person point of view. It was kind of an experiment. So,
It's just amazing.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm in this writing group with some famous poet from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Every other week we have to read something out loud, like for each other, a few minutes. Some writer we admire. So you are on next. I was stunned. It was about the man who was attacked, and when he's talking about how next time he's gonna go right for it. The way that scene unfolds, I'm telling you, I read it 10 times over.
My cousin Bobby, who was the model for Gideon's godfather, passed away in 2019, and he was like my older brother.
You should probably start.
You should probably start. Yes. So
Yes, I will call you on.
I'm gonna have to take my mask off to read though, but I'll be up here away from everybody.
I think that's okay. You can take the mask off to read. Are we ready? Shall we begin? I'm sorry?
Make this full screen here.
Let me get this. I'm so bad at this stuff. Let's begin our mystery night in the sanctuary, which to me at least is a very mysterious place on its own. For those of you who may not have come into this place before, I do want to point out the broken star over there, the Jewish star, the Holocaust memorial we have here. And I think for me personally, it's the first time ever I feel surreal in a place where normally I would feel at home. My daughters had their bat mitzvahs here. I had my bat mitzvah, and I was pretty old at that time. So anyways, we are here in this space because it was set up for streaming platforms already, and we thank my husband Daniel Kester, who was the guy who initially set it up and then helped us set it up for tonight. It's our first hybrid event for the Buffalo Corner, and we were all a little, hesitant about it. So I want to welcome all of you who came in person. You're brave. I'm proud of you. And all of you who zoomed in also, we welcome you to Shir Shalom. And we want to thank Congregation Shir Shalom, Rabbi Alex, our director, Joanne Marquesi, and of course our guest host tonight, Carrie Ross. Now, Rabbi Alex wanted to say a prayer and read a short poem, so please do so.
We welcome everyone, all of you on Zoom. I hope you feel like you're in Shir Shalom. This is a great setting for a mystery. I feel like that we might get a mystery out of here. Hopefully no murders, though.
Oh, that would be silly. We kill people for a living.
For those of you on Zoom, you're not hearing. There's the mystery writers are saying they kill people for a living. Before we get started, I think it's really important. This has been a very awful week in our community and in the world. And coming together to read, to talk, to discuss is actually a way of saying we believe in life, that life matters, and it's the thing that rejuvenates us. So I hope tonight that we can, this can be also healing, as well as funny and illuminating and scary maybe, and that's what helps us get through. So I have a little prayer, as Gunilla said, and thank you to Gunilla and Irene and our whole team for putting this wonderful on our sign outdoor, Joanne. But Buffalo Corner is back. So before I read this poem, this is really true. Last Saturday was a day of shuttling kids. If you have kids and sports teams, it's all over the place. And it was one of those days where my wife and I exchanged cars, and somehow I ended up with both sets of keys. And I was in Akron a half hour away, and she was in Amherst. And we had to figure out what to do with one car near her and one car near me. And as I was, and the game that I was at got rained out anyways. But as I was there, sometimes I like to write songs, which are a form of poetry. And this happened to me before September 11th, the same thing. I was writing a song the night before September 11th about a burning building. And this is the words of the song that I was composing on the Saturday right before I heard the news. After the event, this horrific terrorist attack, which is what I would call it, on our community. It's called, I would say, Another Day. The buzzards, they fly at the edge of the sky. Tears well up in the ducts of our eyes. Leaves, they turn brown by the end of July. When the bark breaks, the tree starts to die. All living things that I can think of are preparing to lose what they love. It's crazy that I was writing those words right when I heard what happened. That's when you believe it's either a complete coincidence or there is a God. So what I'll do is I'm going to read the names of the 10 individuals who died, and then there's a poem from our liturgy that I'm going to read part of as a way of remembering, by us remembering not only their lives and not only the way that they died, but the beauty and fullness of their lives. That is our obligation as a community. We are remembering Robert A. Drury, 32, Margus D. Morrison, 52, Andre McNeil, 53, Aaron Salter, 55, Geraldine Talley, 62, Celestine Cheney, 65, Hayward Patterson, 67, Catherine Massey, 72, Pearl Young, 77, Ruth Whitfield, 86. Please, wise one, God of the life breath of all flesh, waken your spirit within all inhabitants of our land, and plant among the peoples of different nationalities and faiths who dwell here love and brotherhood, peace and friendship. Uproot from their hearts all hatred and enmity, all jealousy and vying for supremacy. Fulfill their desire to see it become a light to all nations. Therefore, may it be your will that our land should be a blessing to all inhabitants of the globe. Cause it to dwell among all people in friendship and freedom. And soon fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Let them learn no longer the ways of war. And we say together, Amen. I'll turn it over to Gunilla.
Thank you, Rabbi Alex. I think being a rabbi is mysterious enough, but then to be a rabbi and a poet, that's quite some undertaking. So thank you very much, and thank you for having us here. And as I wanted to introduce our guest host for is it the third or the fourth time now? For the annual Mystery Night, Gary Ross, a scholar and a gentleman, one of the most knowledgeable people I know. Ask him anything, he will know the answer. And thank you, you've been a friend and a mentor to me since I came to Buffalo. He is an admired professor from UB, now retired, a brilliant writer of just about every genre you can think about: short stories, a children's book, a historical novel, The Blackbird Rising, which I recommend. It's for sale out there. It's about the turn from the 19th to the 20th century, but it's set here in Buffalo, and it's a really good book. And I mean, I don't know, at least 8 plays, maybe 9, 10 by now. All of them performed. And lately we have the Gideon Rhymes mystery novels. And if you haven't read them, do get a set for the summer. They are wonderful. All of them are set here in Buffalo. The first one begins on Hertel Avenue, am I correct? It ends at the silos. The good guy and the bad guy, each with a gun, trying to shoot each other so they can, get rid of one and throw them in the silos. It's very exciting. And the second one began in, if I remember correctly, Elmwood Village, and ended out here, close to the village of Williamsville. And now I'm in the middle of the third one. And if it weren't for this event, I would have said no to anything just to stay home to finish. But it begins right outside Temple Beth Zion with a very nasty attack. And I will tell you where it ends when I get there tonight or tomorrow. Or you can tell us, please. So Gary, take over. The night is yours. We are so happy to have you here and with your fellow mystery writers.
Thank you, Gunilla. First, let me thank Gunilla and Daniel for doing the tech and setting this up. And Rabbi Alex, thank you for hosting. I have been to Shir Shalom many times to read, and I trust I'm coming across in terms of my audio.
No, can you make it louder? It's hard
Yeah.
to hear online.
Is that doable? Make it a little. I don't know how to do this. Oh, you have to lean over your toe.
Oh, that's for the room. Yeah, I'm not seeing the light around my rectangle to indicate that they can hear my audio. That's what.
It's a little better, but it could be a little louder.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Can we just make it louder down
Yeah,
here?
that looks.
Is that good, doing better? Try that.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me at home now?
Yes, it's better, yeah.
Good. Well, I want to thank Gunilla for inviting me, inviting us, and Daniel for doing the tech, and Rabbi Alex for making Shir Shalom available. I've read here many times. I've spoken here a couple times, and it's a lovely building. I consider myself a friend of the congregation. I am here tonight with two additional mystery writers who are friends of mine, Susan Lynn Solomon and Therese Papins, who's going to be joining us by way of Zoom. And I'm going to introduce Susan first. Susan and I have been friends for a long time at this point. She was in a writing workshop I did for Just Buffalo, and she was writing very serious material. And at one point we got into a discussion, and she said, I really like mysteries, but I don't think I can write one. Now, I don't remember this discussion, but she tells me this is what happened. And I have to believe her because I remember the transformative discussion I had with my friend Gary Wolf in high school. He'd read a book I'd written, and he said the thing is, the only advice I would give is that you have like 6 characters and make them violently different from each other. And he doesn't remember, he's now, a renowned artist. He doesn't remember having that conversation with me in study hall on the 2nd floor of Bennett High School. But I remember it. So I'm going to take Susan's word for it that I said to her, why don't you write one? And I believe she says I said something like, dare you to do it, or something close enough. So Susan has a mystery series. I will let her introduce the series, Emlyn Good. Okay, I will let her introduce the Emlyn Good series. They're a little lighter than what I do in my work. So Susan, you come on up, and you take the floor first, and then Therese, I'll be calling on you afterward, just so you know.
Hi all, I'm Susan Lynn Solomon. As Gary mentioned, I am the author of the Emlyn Good Mysteries. At this point, there are published 3 novels and 3 novelettes, and 1 short story that's available only on Kindle. Emlyn Good is an author. We always write what we know. And the books are set in and around Niagara Falls. Emlyn, at the age of 40, had just learned that she's a direct descendant of Sarah Good, who was hanged as a witch in Salem in 1692. And Emlyn has Sarah's diary, what today Wiccans would call a Book of Shadows. Those are light mysteries, and As a matter of fact, there were one or two times while I'm typing away, I was laughing out loud. I am not going to read from those tonight. I have two brand new books. Both are really on a more serious subject. One really is a murder mystery. That's What's Past as Prologue. This grew from a conversation I was having with my editor, who insisted on talking about a past life experience. While we were talking, I remembered that where I grew up, downstate, there was this old yellow brick tenement, very run down. If I walked past it, if I drove past it, if I was in a bus passing it, I went into a blind panic. I don't know why, but that was the first point of reference. A few weeks later, I was watching an episode of Mysteries of the Museum, and they had one segment where they dug up a body underneath a parking lot, and I knew where that was. It wasn't far from it. I had the second point of reference. The book fell together, and it was written within 3 months. Essentially, Jessica Menotti is frightened by a recurrent dream in which she's chased through a maze by an unseen assailant. Hoping to escape her fears, she moves to Niagara Falls and takes a job as an assistant district attorney. Doesn't help. Called by Detective Mulroney to oversee the collection of evidence at a murder scene, Jessica is panicked when she sees an old yellow building, then is startled by old bones dug up and a strange ring found in the grave. It's the first time she's seen any of this, yet her instinct is to run from that place. At the same time, though, she's just met Mulroney. She feels drawn to him as to someone she's loved for years. Love, fear. Where are these feelings coming from? Certainly not from any experience in this life. When she is assigned a case involving drug smugglers, that maze dream and her sense of dread at the crime scene come into focus. Struggling to understand her sense of déjà vu leads to a vision of her death in a past life, and maybe her death in this one. The start of the book. My eyes snapped open. That dream. Again. I sat up blinking. Rays of moonlight crept through my bedroom window, blinds creating a grid on the wall, a maze, almost like the one in my dream. I glanced at the clock radio at my night table. The flashing digital display told me there had been a power outage. Yawning, I climbed from bed and looked at the watch on my dresser. In the scant light, I saw the minute hand pointing just past 3:15. I pulled down a slat of the blinds and peered through. A wind gust blew raindrops like shotgun pellets against the window. The weatherman had correctly predicted that a thunderstorm would fill the night. Back in bed, leaning on the pillows, pushed up against the headboard, I tried to recall the first time I'd had this type of dream. Was I 5, 6? Running through an endless maze had haunted my sleep for as long as I could remember. This night I had been lost in an attic among boxes piled almost to the rotting joists running across rafters that groaned above me. In desperation, I searched for a way out. A hand reached for me. That's when I woke up. The maze that haunted my dreams wasn't always in an attic. Sometimes I would be lost in the streets of Forest Hills, hearing an automobile's engine rev behind me. Panicked, running through a maze of high-rise apartment buildings, I would feel desperate to find safety in the one in which my Aunt Eleanor lived. Other times, I would be in endless tunnels below some street. I sighed and thumbed away tears from the corners of my eyes. There were so many other times I'd had this type of dream, too many of them. I had hoped that my move from Long Island to Niagara Falls would leave those dreams behind in the trash like so many unwanted pieces of my past. I leaned over, turned on the bedside lamp, and picked up the book I had been reading. Fear that I would return to the maze caused the muscles in my legs to twitch and left me unable to fall back asleep. That's the start of What's Past as Prologue. The other book, and my most recent book, is called Raising Cain. This book, at the urging of Cantor Irwin at Beth Shalom and my friends there, does have a Jewish underpinning, finally. There is a section set in Niagara Falls, but most of it is downstate, in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and a little bit in Chicago. The narrator, Libby Bridgman, is a stringer for the Village Voice. She balks when Max Howard, her editor, insists that she interview Alicia Kane. Though a campus rebel, a rock superstar, and an icon in the 1970s, Kane hasn't been heard of in 40 years. A Brooklyn court case involving Black Lives Matter protest seems far more relevant, but you don't say no to Max Howard. While writing the article about the interview after meeting Kane, Libby receives a call from a detective. Alicia Kane is dead. Accident or suicide, the detective tells her, but Libby believes she was murdered. When Max insists that she dropped the story, she's certain he knows more than he'll tell her. In Greenwich Village, Chicago, Niagara Falls, a Manhattan recording studio, Libby interviews people who'd known Kane. Like Max, each seems to hide something. A connection to her family. Then, one tumultuous night, she learns Alicia Kane's complete story, and this flips her world. One of the book, tedium of a stringer's life. A Brooklyn jury was primed to decide if a woman who drove her car into a group protesting the police killing of George Floyd is guilty of attempted murder. I should have been in that courtroom, my pen and pad poised when the foreman handed the verdict to the judge. Regardless of the outcome, the decision would be news, maybe get my byline in papers across the country. I wanted to be in that Brooklyn courtroom. Damn it, I wasn't. After bouncing from job to job, changing careers twice, and at last settling into one reporting for a local newspaper, I had gotten a call from the editor of the Village Voice. I hadn't sent him my resume, yet with no preamble, he'd offered me a job. That's why when the editor instructed me to forget Brooklyn and catch a flight to Niagara Falls to interview a singer who hadn't been heard from in 40 years, I couldn't argue, at least not much. Come on, Max, where's the relevance of that kind of story, I told him. In a gruff voice, Max Howard said, not that I have to explain, Bridgman, but I'm planning a retrospective on the late 60s and 70s. I want a piece on Alicia Kane. The woman was a big part of that era, a lioness who couldn't be tamed. Did he really think my imagination would be titillated? I told him, maybe I should bring something soft for her to gnaw on. That lioness must be toothless by now. Then I sighed. Why me, Max? I wasn't born in the 70s. What could I bring to a story about her? A fresh perspective, he said, with the distracted abruptness I'd found to be typical of men in the news profession. When I hesitated, he said, just do it. And the phone line went dead. Staring at my phone, I muttered, editors. Max Howard was in his early 40s, only 6 years older than I. Why did he try so hard to sound like Ed Asner in Mary Tyler Moore Show reruns? I tossed my cell phone onto the bed. I didn't yet have a workplace at The Voice, so I did my writing in my bedroom. Grumbling, I cleared the makeup off my small desk, pulled a small notepad from a drawer, and logged onto the internet to see what background I could find about Alicia Kane. Google informed me that she had been born in September 1948. Had been an art major at Pratt Institute, and had a few paintings exhibited at some gallery in Soho. The website included a brief critique of her work. In the short time I'd worked as a reporter, I learned that even the smallest street could open into a wide avenue, so I made a note of the gallery address, then clicked my mouse on another link. The second site had a synopsis of her recording career. It listed the albums her group, Raising Cain, had turned out between 1970 and 1980, along with the chart positions of a dozen singles, all of them years out of print. After that, nothing. A dead end. This assignment felt ridiculous. What could Max Howard be thinking? Okay, the woman had been a rock star, but the 70s was about more than rock and roll. In the Times online archive, I found a short article about a 1968 student riot at Pratt. No mention of Cain. Max isn't stupid. There has to be something more there, I thought, as I struggled into a pair of tight jeans and pulled a sweatshirt over my pajama top. I knew of a vintage record shop a block from my apartment. Maybe her music would tell me something. A lioness of the 60s and 70s, I said with a sardonic laugh as I sat before my makeup mirror. I have a habit of thinking out loud. In fact, sometimes my words fall from my mouth before I realize they're in my brain. This can be embarrassing, not ladylike, my mother often told me. While in my mind I listened to my mother chastise me for this untoward trait, I had another idea. Ira. I picked up my phone and punched in the number of a friend who worked at a collection agency. Phone, gas, electric bills, charge accounts, speeding tickets, arrests, even most birth records, every bit of a person's life seemed to be logged in some computer's database. My friend had access to those. After a few minutes on hold, listening to Latin music, he came on the line. Ira, I said, what do you want now? Do I have to want something to call an old high school pal? You always want something, he said. I give, you take, and I don't hear from you again until you want something else. I sighed. This was definitely not one of my better days handling men. No surprise, I've never handled them very well. I tried again. I just thought maybe you would find me a little background on. Giving you a little background could get me fired. Ira, don't be this way, I said in the most helpless voice I could muster. I don't need anything as deep as last time. No bank records. I'm really stuck for a place to start on my new assignment. You're the only one I can turn to. I heard him grumble something indistinguishable. Before he could turn me down, I explained about Alicia Cain and the dead end I had run up against. Give me anything, please, I begged. You really take the cake, you know that? I was wearing him down. Pretty please? I'll let you take me to dinner Saturday. Again, Ira grumbled, but I heard the clicking of his fingers on his keyboard. When he spoke again, he told me he didn't find much in the database, just a few things. She's living in Niagara Falls and she pays her bills on time. Oh, and there's this. She got arrested in March 1968 during a student riot at Pratt Institute. Not much to go on, but at least I had something to look for in her music. Thanks, Ira, I said. You're a doll. Yeah, I am. And Saturday, you're buying dinner. That afternoon, I called Max Howard and announced that I didn't have to go to Niagara Falls. I had Cain's birth record and everything she'd done. I'd already written most of the story. A few bits needed to flesh it out could be gotten if I talked to her on the phone. He cut me short. I'm not looking for a resume, Bridgman. She's expecting you, so get your ass on a plane and bring me back something I can use. Do I have to think everything out? Frustrated, I asked, what you going to tell me that I don't already know? Do I have to think everything out for you, he said. Okay, here's the angle. Activist makes a name for herself in the cause of public justice, parlays that into stardom, then suddenly quits. What's the connection? How would I know? I said. Put a political editor on the story if that's what you want. Why do I have to do this? Because I'm the boss and I said so. I thought about calling him back, but from the tone and the way he slammed down the phone. The next morning I got on a puddle jumper, rented a car in the Buffalo airport, and drove through the slushy remains of late March snow to find Alicia Cain. I figured that it would be a quick interview, just long enough to give me 1,000 words with which to satisfy a cranky editor. And again, that's Raising Cain. The first book is what's past as prologue. And I will admit that, as I was explaining before to some others, that Alicia Cain, who's the subject of the book, her past very much reflects my younger days in college, where I did in fact start a riot on the campus. And for years I was a singer-songwriter with a rock band. But I'm a writer, I can invent things. My band didn't get to be superstars, but at least in this book, they did. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Susan. Therese, I'm trying to see where you are. There you are. Okay, up in the corner. Therese Papins also has a mystery series set in this area. I'll let her explain her detective, and she's in the upper right-hand corner of this computer. I don't know how she'll look at on computers at home. Okay, we're gonna blow her up.
All right.
Metaphor.
All right.
Where's she? Oh, here.
I'm up here, upper left on my computer.
There you go. There you go. Hi, sweetie. How are you?
Thank you.
Okay, take it away.
Okay. All right. Well, here I am on a giant screen. I have to thank Daniel for setting that up, because I think primarily, with the situation, the COVID numbers increasing, I felt like it was a little bit safer perhaps to be, in on Zoom. So I want to thank him. I want to thank Gary for inviting me. This is I see a lamp kind of blocking me, so I want to try to move to avoid this lamp. I want to thank Gary for inviting me. This is my second mystery night. And I also want to thank him for, I'm going to put this up, for writing the blurb on the back of my most recent novel. So before I begin, I just wanted to give a little background. One of my friends recently asked me, why is it that you're writing mysteries? What could be your motivation? I'm typically known as writing poetry. So I was thinking about it, and I thought one of the things that's perhaps most in my mind, considering the tragedy, the horrible events of the weekend, was that writing mysteries, we often are writing about justice. One of the ideas behind writing a mystery is that, the bad guy can be caught. Maybe we need a little bit of this. We need to know that evil is punished. It might give us comfort. So I think sometimes the mystery can give you that sense that there is justice in the world. Another reason, even though I've never been a police officer, I've been in contact with some police officers to just get some background. But when I lived in Europe, I worked as a reader for 2 publishing houses, and I was assigned mysteries. I must have read hundreds of mysteries, and it wasn't a genre that was my favorite at the time. I mean, I hadn't really read many mysteries, maybe the Agatha Christie when I was back as a teenager. So I can't even count how many mysteries I read. Maybe, like they say, as a writer, you learn by reading. And one of my favorite mystery writers, was Robert Wilson, who took a particularly kind of psychological bent to his mysteries. So in my series, I have, a character, Dan Corrali, who's a police detective. And Dan Corrali, he's definitely a person with a lot of problems, and he tries to overcome them. As one of my friends had put on Snow Clues, which was the first Dan Corrali mystery, said he describes the novel Snow Clues as a moving, character-driven story of a decent cop investigating the brutal murder of a child while trying at the same time to put his life back together. So in my second book, River Clues, I don't know if you can see this pretty well, he's working on getting that life back together again. And I think, as I wrote this, as I think I mentioned in the last murder mystery night, this was a hard slog, because as I wrote it, we were going through Black Lives Matters. The police detective was certainly not a positive figure, so I was working on trying to, he is a flawed person, but as all of us are, he's a flawed person, but somehow he moves on with his life. So this River Clues is the second book in the series. Snow Clues, River Clues, who knows, my next book, Budapest Clues. He may be going to Budapest. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from this one. Both of the novels are set in Buffalo, and at some point I keep hoping that Buffalo will become as popular as the noir fiction of, Scandinavia, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. So in this case, okay, Dan Corrali, he's back at work. So I'm going to just read an excerpt of this. Dan felt lighter. He'd shed a lot of the past. He was lucky. He had a clean slate to work again, though he had suffered what some in the station referred to as a breakdown. He kept his job as a detective in the Buffalo Police Force. The job consisted mostly of waiting for reports and waiting for assignments. That was what Dan was most familiar with, paperwork and dead time. He wasn't expecting his first day back to be any different. A light on the phone flashed. A fisherman found a body on the Niagara River. Dan jumped up from his desk and said to Deke, his partner, "Let's go." Deke squeezed his lanky frame into the passenger seat. Who the hell used this car last? A midget? He pushed the seat back as far as it could go. Always complaining, Dan said. Nothing had changed. The fisherman was a small, dark-skinned man, one of the city's most recent inhabitants, a refugee from Burma. Dan approached him. The man shook his head. No English. My son. His hand shaking, he pointed to the little boy standing behind him. Dan crouched down to talk to the child. "I'm Dan. What's your name?" "Ko Ray. We're fishing." The boy wasn't scared like his father. Dan had no idea what brought them to America, but it couldn't be good. Ko Ray pointed to the body that was pulled up on shore. "Dead?" Dan nodded. The father pulled out a wrinkled piece of paper with his name, address, and social. Dan copied it down and wondered if his grandfather had carried a handwritten document like that when he came over from Hungary and didn't speak English. He walked over to Deke. "We got to get an interpreter here." Dan needed to find out more about the city's refugees. Buffalo was a resettlement center, and for decades, when it was a bustling industrial port, it had attracted immigrants and refugees from around the world. 2 uniformed men were standing by the ambulance to take away the body. Dan asked them, "Anyone else see this?" Another guy was fishing. "Where is he?" "Gone." As soon as the patrol car showed up, everyone scattered. Probably worried about fishing without a license. As if that were the only problem here, Dan shook his head. He approached the body. It was a woman. Long blonde hair covered her face. A dark blue dress was twisted around her legs, peeking out from the mud and river slime. One shoe, high heels. Dan spotted a diamond on her ring finger, bloated from the water and sticking out from under the slime. A robbery gone bad was not likely to be a cause. Questions flooded Dan's mind. A boating accident? A body thrown overboard? Deke came up behind him. "Looks dressed up." Dan agreed and pointed to the shoe. "Not what you'd wear on a typical boat trip or a stroll by the river." "A party girl," Deke said. Back in the office, Dan contacted the Coast Guard for reports of any boats that had been in trouble. April was early in the season, but the most intrepid boaters wouldn't wait. Buffalo was on an international border. Lake Erie and the Niagara River connected the region to Canada just across the river. Bodies regularly showed up on the river. Niagara Falls was close by, and there were the crazies who jumped over fences to try a stunt, or those lured by the swirling waters. There were even the hapless tourists trying to get that special photo, stepping over barriers and sliding down the slope into the water. No matter what barriers were constructed, every year brought deaths on the river. Next, Dan examined the missing persons report. No woman matching the description appeared. He called the Canadian police for any information from across the border. And then I'm going to just skip a little part here. About 2 p.m., a missing person report came in. Liz Bennett, 35, was last seen on Saturday night around midnight. Was she the body in the river? If so, that meant she was in the water just about 2 days. Dan examined the picture more closely. Something about her looked familiar. Then it hit him. Of course, she was the wife of Raymond Bennett, U.S. Representative for Southern Erie County. She never made it home after a fundraiser in the suburb of Orchard Park. Okay, and then Deke came in and looked over his shoulder. Not even our jurisdiction. The body is. Got to get hubby to come in and identify, Deke said. He's in DC on his way. Anything else on her? Dan asked. She's from Denver. How do you know that? I watch the news. They're the perfect political couple. Photogenic blondes with 2 blonde children. They even have a dog, Deke said. Republican, right? It's the Burbs, Dan. Who reported her missing? The housekeeper. I don't know what they call them now. Assistant? Let me know when Bennett gets back, Dan said. Raymond Bennett would have to ID the body, such as it was. So I'm going to leave it at that point. And so this, as we look on the back, I'm going to give a little bit of, I'll read Gary's blurb. Haunted by marital issues left unresolved by the death of his wife, worried that his sister's cancer may be terminal, and caught in the rush of a possible relationship with a colleague, Dan Corrali is in the eye of a human storm when he's faced with the murder of a prominent politician's wife. Is the murder a standalone, or is it a part of a series? A lean, spare police procedural, tightly told. And then another little blurb. In a compelling plot, Papins deftly depicts Buffalo detective Dan Corrali as he goes about tracking the suspected murders of 2 local women. As suspense mounts, we're also privy to the private life of Corrali, who wins us over despite his faults. A tantalizing read full of warmth amidst the crime. So, these 2 books are available. If anyone's interested, I'm going to just put my email down in the chat if you're interested in a signed copy. And I just want to thank everybody for attending. And I hope you enjoy the books. Thank you very much. I can still talk. I see there's a bit of silence.
Thank you, Therese. And I've written the Gideon Rhymes Mysteries, as Ganilla said earlier. My titles all tend to be double entendre. Nickel City Blues dealt with Gideon Rhymes, my detective, bodyguarding a blues singer who was being stalked by her ex-boyfriend, who was a cop. Nickel City Crossfire had one active church and one church converted into something else, 2 drug gangs, and some action between them. And then the 3rd book, Nickel City Storm Warning, wasn't really a double entendre title so much as it was me worrying about what might happen. Now, before I get into a bit on that book, I will say that my son did 3 combat tours in Iraq and then came home and became a police officer. And he kind of inspired the idea of Gideon Rhymes, though Rhymes had sort of a similar history. And when he got home, he became a cop for, he had been an Army cop, and so he became a cop for Buff State. Then after a shootout, he left that job and hung up his shingle as a private eye. And I think my son, who left his police job after about a dozen years to become deputy director of security for a major government contractor in Florida, has won the contest for who would do well. David had a new house built this past year, and I know Gideon Rhymes couldn't afford to do that. So when I was planning the books, I originally intended that the book Storm Warning would be the 4th book in the series. But a few years ago, given the way politics was developing in the country, I thought I should do Storm Warning now. Storm Warning deals with a white supremacist attack in Buffalo. Now, I'm either feeling prescient, or maybe I'm just a guy who knows the country he lives in. And I was horrified by what happened last weekend, and I kept thinking, I mean, the idea that I'd written about something like this beforehand haunted me. Now, the types of attacks are totally different. In Nickel City Storm Warning, there was a character, Drea Wingard, who early on in the book, her husband is murdered in front of her, and she manages to survive that night with a white supremacist gang that breaks in. Her husband was a Washington Post reporter who was investigating these people. And later, she decides that she's going to write his book, the book he would have written. And so she, as a librarian of Congress, as one of the librarians at the Library of Congress, she can do the research and so forth. And his murder upends her life totally. So she writes her book, and then that gang tracks her to Buffalo, where she's speaking at a diversity conference with the intention of attacking the conference. Nickel City Storm Warning, I use first-person narration for the first two books. Nickel City Storm Warning really has two books in it. I had to write Drea's book first. So I wrote 7 or 8 chapters of her book, and then I let it sit for like 6 months. And then I came back in and started writing the major narration, the frame story that it would be in. Now, the Rhimes novels are narrated in the first person. Now, her book should have been written in the first person too, but I thought that'll get confusing if it's I did this and I did that every time for every chapter. So I used the very rare second person narration. And I used the excuse that she felt detached, that she was floating above her own life. And let's see, I need 266. The book she wrote is based on an Italian idiom. It's a way to wish someone good luck. In bocca al lupo, which means in the mouth of the wolf. And that's saying things are hard. And then the response to that should be crepe il lupo, may the wolf die. So her book is entitled In the Mouth of the Wolf, and she describes her circumstances and how she came to write the book. So there's 7 chapters, I think, from her book, and they're interspersed throughout. I'm going to read a little bit from her chapter, from one of her chapters. The comfort you find in having Grant's papers around you wanes long before you take your ideas to Marcy, Grant's editor. At first, so soon after his clothing went away in a Salvation Army truck, the spiky handwriting that used to annoy you on his post-it notes, the partial thumbprint in smudged copier toner, and the doodles on the flip side of pages in his reporter's notebook brought him back to you in ways that made you smile. But the deeper you delved into his research, the more he retreated into the background. Now, as you make your own notes and use a pink highlighter on his, you chide yourself not only for failing to recognize how much all this must have disturbed him, but also for knowing so few specifics of this history yourself. Unsure whether to be grateful or angry he shared so little with you, you realize the term you used in Dr. Clay's office, metastatic psychopathology, is a more apt description of bigotry than you had imagined. By the time Marcy tells you to write this book, you know a book is exactly where Grant was headed with what he had compiled. However uncertain you are about finishing such a project, the more people you meet in your husband's notes, the greater your resolve to try. Founding father and Declaration of Independence signatory Dr. Benjamin Rush believed black skin was a type of leprosy spread only through reproduction and would infect the future if intermarriage were permitted. Thomas Jefferson wrote of black inferiority in body and mind, even as he fathered 6 children with his slave Sally Hemings. In 1900, U.S. Senator Pitchfork Ben Tillman boasted on the Senate floor of leading marauders to kill blacks during the 1876 South Carolina elections, and declared the 14th and 15th Amendments null and void. Tennessee State Librarian John Trotwood Moore was a lynching supporter whose 1929 funeral was notable for having black pallbearers dressed as Confederate soldiers. Then there are the scientists who went to great lengths to prove the superiority of Nordic peoples. Samuel George Morton measured cranial capacities in skulls from around the world to justify a racial hierarchy, despite work by others that refuted his conclusions. Physician Samuel Cartwright coined the term drapetomania to describe the mental illness that made slaves run away. A statistician, Francis Galton's term eugenics led to an academic discipline and numerous professional societies, but also to forced sterilizations in America and crematory ovens in Europe. The connection between racism of the past and white supremacists of the present are direct. From early Southern Baptists citing dark skin as the mark of Cain and the curse of Ham to justify slavery, to Brigham Young telling Utah legislators descendants of Cain were destined for servitude, to imprisoned LDS fundamentalist and child molester Warren Jeffs proclaiming black people are the vessel used by the devil to carry evil into the world. From 19th century pseudoscience, limited black intelligence, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong sentence there. From 19th century pseudoscience to 20th century eugenics to Shockley and Jensen's ideas of genetically limited black intelligence. From the publications of Mein Kampf to a New Jersey man who named his son Adolf in 2008 and later changed his own surname to Hitler. From the Ku Klux Klan and Germany's Nazi Party to more than 70 supremacist groups, racist churches, and political parties in America today. Online you find videos targeting young white men, exercises to build healthy white bodies that will make white women swoon, combat training with white men showing off their martial arts prowess for subduing mud people and drug users and taking back America from inferiors. Instructions that range from taping the hands to protect them during street fighting to designing and hiding weaponry that may save precious lives. From guides to concealing the identity during public demonstrations or civil disobedience to living room lectures on the importance of having white babies. Underscoring everything are printouts from racist internet joke sites, the search having produced 2 million page hits. Now I won't read the jokes, I'll skip those. Feeling soiled and sad but full of rage, you now want to write this book for more than Grant's memory. You want to write for all those shunned because of Russia's beliefs, for a slave girl of 14 pulled into bed by a future president 30 years her senior, for those who died at the hands of Tillman's red shirts, for Moore's humiliated pallbearers, for the 1,000+ whose empty skulls were filled with pepper seeds or lead shot to estimate the value of their descendants, for the slaves caught and returned to a bondage that included whipping as therapy for the madness that made them flee, for those who went under the knife or into gas chambers, for those whose churches demanded adherence to a faith that demeaned them, for students condemned to high rates of failure by the low expectations of those who teach them, for children raped by a charismatic monster masquerading as yet another voice of God, for everyone diminished by a hatred with roots so deep the venom of its fruit is heated by hell. You understand at last that this is bigger than Grant and you. This is evil, evil that must be stopped. So in storm warning, I do feel a little weird that I was writing about something that kind of happened, different circumstances, but I do feel weird. The fourth book was just published. My publisher got it out a little early, and I was happy for that. It's called Nickel City Naked Lady. And a naked lady, well, let me tell you, the book is about what might be revenge porn. A retired, respected educator in her 60s begins to receive DVDs of her intimate moments with her younger lover, who has disappeared. And she doesn't know what they mean. Her brother who is a judge. He brings her to Gideon Rhymes, and they hire him to try to get to the bottom of this. Meanwhile, while he's doing this, he meets an assistant district attorney. Now, those of you who've read the Rhymes novels know that Rhymes's partner is an Afro-Latina lawyer named Phoenix Trinidad. And so they've become, since the first book when they met, they've become, an item that many people know. My editor has said that she likes the idea of a stable relationship for a hero in this. And I said, well, I kind of like being a one-woman man, so I figured I would pass that on to my creation. And so he does meet an assistant district attorney who's a friend of Phoenix's, and Addison Miles is also a musician who plays a naked lady, a con tenor saxophone from the 30s with registered numbers, etc. So again, double entendre in the titles. I'm going to read part of a chapter where Gideon and Phoenix are at an outdoor music festival down at Michigan and William, and then I heard the first shot. Miles and Phoenix both went down, the Corona bottle hanging in the air a second before it smashed to the pavement. I toppled my own chair and lost my sub, scraping an arm and a leg on hot cement as I drew my Glock and looked for the shooter. As the crowd ducked and scattered, his second shot gave me a fix on him. I had put our chairs near the intersection. A car was stopped at the curb, maybe 50 feet away. The passenger door was open, shielding a dark-skinned man with a handgun. I had no idea whether he had stepped out of the car just then or was getting in for the first time. All I saw was that his shooting arm, braced atop the door, jerked with his third and fourth shots. Lying on my left side and using my left elbow and hand to lock my right wrist into a makeshift shooting frame, I squeezed my trigger 3 times, momentarily deafening myself. The window shattered and the shooter doubled backward into the car, but I was unsure whether I'd hit him. The car pulled away from the curb and swerved, passenger door still open, and the shooter's heels dragging as he tried to pull his legs inside. Silver sedan, maybe a Kia or an Audi. I was too far away to catch the tag numbers, but the white field and dark blue characters told me it was a newer Excelsior plate, not the older Empire Gold. With the immediate threat zipping down Michigan, I holstered my gun and scrambled over my chair to Phoenix and Miles. He was on his behind, propped on his elbows and looking dazed, as if the wind had been knocked out of him. She was on her right side, blood pooling around her midsection and her breathing labored. She blinked at me, eyes unfocused, lips moving wordlessly, cinnamon skin going pale. I knew she must be going into shock. "Call 911, I screamed. "Tell him officer down." "She a cop?" The voice I heard, but didn't turn toward, seemed to belong to an older man. "Officer of the court," Miles sounded like he was trying to catch his breath, but he was talking and Phoenix wasn't, so I kept my attention on her. "Say an ADA is down too," Miles added. "They'll get here faster." "ADA, got it." Ignoring the other voices beginning to crowd around us, I moved Phoenix onto her back, gingerly, just enough, I hoped, for me to see where she'd been hit. "I'm here, baby, I got you." The source of the blood was just above her right hip bone. I slipped my fingers behind her and discovered no exit wound. The good news was that she was bleeding from only one side. The bad news? The bullet was still inside. But first things first, I needed to compress the wound. "They on their way," a comforting tone now, the older man I still hadn't seen. My Swiss Army knife was home, but the pen in my back pocket was an aluminum tactical combat model with a glass break point for emergencies. I pulled it out, caught a sizable handful of Phoenix's long white dress, and punched a hole large enough for me to get 2 fingers inside and tear out a stretch of cloth to make a compress. I folded it and pressed it against the wound, which made her wince and me bite my lip. Holding the compress in place, I eased my free arm under her neck and head. "Sorry about the dress," I said. She did not respond. Now the older man raised his voice in anger. "Y'all put them Damn cell phone cameras down. These people don't need this on the internet. There was grumbling somewhere, but others echoed the old man, telling this or that person to put down the phone. 3 or 4 people claimed they had rights. One said a TV station would pay for a video. All right then, y'all film them. I'ma film you doing it. And I'ma give my video to this man right here. Y'all already seen him shoot that fool in that car. This go online, maybe he shoots your ass too. For a moment, there was only silence. Then someone said, he a cop? Do it matter? These people been shot. And here you trying to make money off their misery. Least somebody could do is get them some water. Damn vultures. Man, who you think you are, you Uncle Ben wannabe? You can't talk to us like that. Miles cleared his throat. Listen, I don't know who he is, but I am an assistant district attorney. Addison Miles, Miles with a Y. Write it down so you know up front who's going to screw up your life if you make a bad decision here. Any pictures or footage you've taken might help a criminal investigation, so bring them to the DA's office. If you think snitches get stitches and we can't protect you, fine, keep quiet. But anything you post online, anything, might impede an investigation. Do that, and I will charge your ass with obstruction so fast you'll step in front of a train to avoid the next 3 years in court and the loss of every dime you got in legal fees. From some distance away came the sound of sirens. Help will be here soon, Phoenix, I said softly, leaning over to kiss her forehead. Just keep looking at me, baby. I tried to hold her eyes with mine, even as my own vision blurred. Just keep looking at me. I got you. Got you too, she said finally, but the strain was evident in her face. Stay still, son. It was the older man's voice again, but he wasn't speaking to me. Take it easy. You got shot too. No, I didn't, Miles said. The bullet went through my sacs and then, I think, changed course and hit my friend. Thank you. Yes. Yes, the books available today they're all available on Amazon. The way bookstores are working, they're not getting to bookstores the same way they used to. So we're in the midst of an evolution. I would like to invite Susan back up, and Therese, you hang on because I don't know what your time frame is, but I thought we'd have questions for a few minutes. Okay. And I guess if you're watching on Zoom and you want to say something or ask a question,
Get out of the way.
put your hand up so I can kind of see it, and we'll take any questions directed to any of the 3 writers. Anybody?
How did we learn to enjoy killing people so well? It really is.
Yeah, okay, if you need a minute, that's okay.
For me, really, the thrill of the mystery is a puzzle. That's what these mysteries are for me. I love doing crossword puzzles, and it's the same thing with a mystery. Looking at the clues, trying to find an answer. I've been fascinated by mysteries since I was 11. Who was it that mentioned as a teenager we gotten a copy of Agatha Christie? In my younger days, I was not a reader. I avoided books all I could. And then my mom gave me a copy of Agatha Christie's Peril at End House, and I was hooked. Since then, I've read everything she's written and anything else I can get my hands on.
I have to add, I'm with you, Susan. My first, I think, was Cat Among the Pigeons, the Agatha Christie. And, I realized that too, because I was thinking of why am I writing these? And I realized that my iPad is full of games and puzzles. So I think there's that logic to it too. The reader wants to be able to work along with what you've created. So it has to be logical always.
And
I want to step right here so you can be seen when you're
outside. I was explaining to some people the object, and Agatha Christie has done this so well, is to put in a whole bunch of clues so that it's almost a street map you can follow. Yes, we want red herrings there too, but But the clues are there, and what we want is that as you finish the book, the reader would go, I should have seen that. And as a matter of fact, in one book, and I don't remember which one it was, Agatha Christie stopped about 3/4 of the way through, and in a page she said, you've read this far, all the clues are there, if you paid attention, you should know who did it. She's right. Anyway.
Hey, Daniel?
Please repeat the questions for the audience.
Okay.
My question is, when you do these puzzles, when you start it, you know the solution already?
The question is, when you start writing a mystery, you work out your puzzles, do you know who did it in the beginning? I will say sometimes. Okay, you can shift that if other things start to develop, but you should have a pretty good idea early on who did it, so you're not psyching yourself out, because you'll forget some details along the way. So you should have an idea of where you're driving, I think. But Susan?
Yeah, Gary's right. Sometimes I will know who did it at the end. However, I am about 1/4 of the way through what will be the 5th Emlyn Good novel, and I just figured out who the killer has to be, because things fall into place. One of the things that I do is I have a separate file of my characters, a cast of characters, so that I can always refer back to what's happened in the past in other books. Most of my characters will flow from book to book, as series tend to do, but there are new characters that are introduced in each of them. And in this book, this book will be called Honeymoon Murder, because I just can't let somebody enjoy being married, so hey. But I was writing and I was writing, and I thought, okay, this is who the killer, and then all of a sudden, oh, and now things are falling into place, and it will fall into place from the book that precedes this. The book that precedes this, that's now sitting with my editor, is called Shooting Par. And of course, I used to enjoy playing golf when I was young enough and my back allowed me, but I did have a body cut up on the Hyde Park golf course. I haven't told them about it yet, but hey, I'll get away with that. But that book and Honeymoon Murder are the only 2 books in the series that really should be read back to back, because one does flow into the other. There is something left undone in Shooting Par, and deliberately so.
Okay, there's a question down here. Irene?
I really like what you said, Susan, about the puzzle. My mother was an avid mystery reader and a New York Times crossword puzzle guru.
Are we related?
In 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that all comes together. I'm thinking, I've mostly read, is it Barbara Pym? Does that name mean anything to you? An English mystery writer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
And
I think it's PYM.
Yes.
That tradition of, I could read those with enjoyment, because the murder was taken care of right away at the beginning. And so the reader didn't have to go through the gory details. And then it was about the village, the community of England, and the whole fabric of life that was very intriguing. I have to admit, what do you think about that?
Well, one of the nice things.
Okay.
Oh, Gary?
Yes. The question is, what is the difference between what might be the English type mystery done by an Agatha Christie, and those are called, for those who don't know, they're called cozies, because they don't portray a lot of violence. Usually they find the body and so forth. The American style tends to be more hard-boiled, where there's, you know, the Mickey Spillane, there's a punch-out, there's a fight, there's a shooting, and so forth. And the difference we see, Susan's doing cozies, and I'm trying not to be too hard-boiled, but I'm leaning in that direction. So that's what the question is. So,
Yeah, and the other thing is that, one, we do not show all the blood and gore. There are also in cozies no explicit sex scenes. I like to think that these types of books can be read by teenagers, as I was able to read the Agatha Christie. But the flow is still the same, and the mystery is still the same. And part of the object, and as you pointed out, and as Gary has done with Buffalo, and as I've tried to do with Niagara Falls, we try to describe where it's taking place in sufficient detail, but without droning on, that somebody that has never been to Buffalo, that's never been to Niagara Falls, can walk down the street and say, "Oh, I know that place. Oh, that restaurant. I got to eat there." That kind of thing, that kind of detail is what we strive for.
I had a quick question here, sorry. Yeah, I think a lot of it does, you were talking about place. I think place is really important in a novel, but do you think it I mean, in my case, they're set in Buffalo also. Do you think it limits the readership? I mean, you know, people have trends, right? I was thinking of, you know, like the noir Scandinavian crime that everybody loves. How could we kind of publicize the Buffalo crime stories?
Well, that's kind of what I've hoped to do. How do we publicize Buffalo crime stories is the question. And I'd hoped to do that with Nickel City Blues, because with the Nickel City series, because I want Buffalo to be a character, because a good place is also a character. One of my favorite writers of mysteries was Robert B. Parker, author of the Spencer novels. You know, Tammy and I were in Boston a number of years ago. We're walking down Boylston. I said, "Yeah, Spencer's office is right up there," because I'd read all the books and was a big fan. And I want people to do a similar thing for Buffalo. And I'm glad that we're having writers write in Niagara Falls or you, Therese, in Buffalo, me in Buffalo, Lisa Marie Redmond, who's been with us and other things, also retired cop, also in Buffalo, because I think there are things that Buffalo has to commend it. And I think, you know, if somebody wants to buy a book for film, one of the conditions they'll have to film some exteriors in Buffalo. That's going to be an absolute condition of sale.
Or Niagara Falls.
Or Niagara Falls.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's, you know, kind of what we are trying to do is make the place as important as the rest of the story.
And, you know, and it's similar. I would love to go to Maine to visit Cabot Cove. It doesn't need to be a big famous city. It needs to be a place that's intriguing because of what's there, because of the people that are there. And I think that there is nothing to deter Western New York, which is a magnificent place, full of incredible art, theater, poetry, music, literature. It's as much an important venue as Cabot Cove, frankly, as Los Angeles and Chicago and Boston and Manhattan, for me, which have all been overdone.
I agree, those other places have been done to death, especially New York City, and then second to that, LA. I've seen Sarah Paretsky's work in the V.I. Wachowski novels in Chicago. It's very good. Although I have to say, I would be reluctant to go to Cabot Cove, as it was for a time the murder capital of the United States. I would be as likely to go to Cabot Cove as I would be to board a train where I saw Hercule Poirot, or a ship where Poirot was there. Oh Lord, somebody's going to die. Gunilla?
I just wanted to mention I grew up on Georges Simenon and the Maigret from
Yes.
Paris.
Yes.
And yes, Paris is a very vivid part of all his work, although he travels to different villages, smaller towns. So it's more the culture, the people who grew up in certain places. And then in one place, there's this woman was murdered, nobody knows why. He goes to talk to the lady who is the housekeeper, and she's frying meat in olive oil. And I will never forget this because it made me.
Yeah, I can't hear either.
Okay, and the Maigret novels, right, they do take advantage of Paris. And for those of you at home who couldn't hear the comment, it was Maigret going to a home to interview a woman, and she's frying leek, which is brings a reality, an air of truthfulness to the use of the setting. If you've read Louise Penny, you will see also terrific use of setting. Are there any more questions?
Yes, Gary, can you hear me? Yeah, hi. I'm thinking, hi, Pat here. I'm thinking that the thing to do would be to send, for you guys to get together and send copies of your books to a reviewer that reviews mystery novels, and, you know, market it as a, you know, as a, you know, Buffalo mystery, you know, the, you know, mystery. I did that with the anthology. I sent a letter to Robert Silver at the New Yorker, and I researched other anthologies, and I tried to pitch it to him that he should do a spot. He should do a review on local anthologies in general, you know. But if you could find a mystery magazine that would do it, that would be your best bet, because you know, it would be you know, a focused audience. But I think you should get together and write a cover letter and find a reviewer or several that would review you know, a Buffalo mystery as a you know, as a group, as a whole, as a group, you know.
That could possibly work, except that we do send books out for reviews, and one of the truths of writing these days is that getting a review is almost as hard as getting a publisher. You send things out, you send out 20 books for reviews. If you get one, you're really lucky, and
yeah,
you know, and it gets to be an expense. There are smaller presses, which is what we're both involved with. If you look at their ISBN numbers, numbers are assigned. They tell reviewers the size of the press that is doing a book. So it's hard to do that. We need other things. I mean, I'm not sure.
I just thought it would be a good angle, you know, for a reviewer, you know.
Together, but I know you've sent books out. I've sent books out, and it's just one of those,
the difficulty is.
But if you sent them together, it might be more of an item, because it would be a novel kind of review that somebody could do, like an angle, you know.
Or maybe something related to a Buffalo evening somewhere that's not in Buffalo. You know what I mean? Like a Buffalo evening that's presented in another city, if somebody had connections in that respect, you know, to kind of do something like this, but introducing, you know, the background to another audience altogether. It's hard to find that audience, but there might be people who know, you know, there might be someone who has a connection in another place. Like, I think what was interesting recently, I think here at the Reader's Corner, there was a poet who was in, I think, the Hudson area, and then he had invited me to read in that. So sometimes it's expanding the group if you can somehow connect with others, you know, I don't know how, but that was a chance, you know, someone from that area then came to this reading and then invited, you know, me to read there. So there must be a way. You're right, there must be a way.
Well, even if you could get a, even if you could get a local article on all the mystery novels that are being produced in Buffalo. Somebody might, it could catch on,
Yeah, it could be sent, sure, to another city, could, be syndicated, hopefully. Yeah, it could be the new novelty of the,
Get in touch with, maybe somebody like Jeff Simon could give you advice on that, like